The opinions expressed in the following program are not necessarily those of Eastlink Community TV, its sponsors, or partners.
Legends of the Hall here on Eastlink. Our guest tonight, a member of the 1978 and 1979 St. Mary's University men's national championship basketball teams. Now the highly acclaimed coach of the Dalhousie Tigers men's team. We'll talk about how that sits with him, going from the Huskies to the Tigers. But here's Rick Plato. Great to have you on the program.
Bruce, great to be here, buddy.
Listen, everybody who talks about you as either a player or a coach, they come down to two words: intensity and hard work. Where does that come from in your life?
I just got to believe it comes from, growing up, my parents, like I've told you before, grew up on a farm. We didn't have cows, we had goats, chickens, rabbits, peacocks, you name it. And, lived out in the country and born in Niagara Falls, New York. My mom was American, dad Canadian. So when I was in third grade, we moved to Canada. And I've got 4 younger sisters. And my mom was a physiotherapist. And then when she started having all of us, stay at home. And my dad always worked 2 jobs. And, I was the oldest, so I'd be out tending to the animals.
You worked the farm?
I worked the farm, and my uncle had a farm, and my parents' friends had farms, so I learned a long time about shoveling the manure.
Yes.
All right, and cleaning out the stables and digging ditches. And
so intensity and hard work part of your life.
Yeah,
from day one.
I guess, I don't know, the intensity, I guess it's always been there. I always hated to lose.
Yeah. Between the peacocks and the chickens, where did you find time to learn to shoot a basketball?
Well, I got to tell you, growing up, back then, everybody played everything. And I always tell the kids at the camps, I never really started playing seriously probably to about grade 7. And then when we moved to Canada, my father had gardens, so he wouldn't let me put a hoop in the driveway. So in the field, there was a big walnut tree. So I took a ladder, and it was on a slope. And I can remember nailing the hoop up to the walnut tree. And when I go back home, it's right across the street from where I grew up. That hoop's still hanging there. So that thing's been up for 50 years. And, I would shoot there. And I can remember when I went from grade 8 to high school, my dad built me a little pad, about 15 by 10 with a hoop. And it always had a ledge. And when the ball used to hit the side of it, it would go into the garden, and it wasn't worth it. So then I had a paper out, and a lot of Americans live. I grew up not too far from Lake Erie. So a lot of Americans, a lot of places, they had their basketball hoops. So I used to take my bag, my papers, and have my ball, and wherever there's a hoop, I'd stay and paper out that probably usually would take maybe 45 minutes to an hour. Usually took about 3 hours. And if I couldn't get a hoop one place, I'd go to another place. So I always shot.
You must have realized early on you're about 6 feet tall, right?
Yeah, a little over, yeah.
And probably not the guy that won 100-yard dashes back in the day.
That's true.
So shooting was going to be your key.
Well, it's the way it sort of evolved. I played a lot of football growing up, and I think it was in grade 12 that I realized that football for university wasn't going to be an option. Basketball was, and I worked at it. Some of the guys now, like Triano, Jay Triano's the head coach of the national team. He was in Niagara Falls, and we used to play against each other. And guy Tommy Skurlak from Notre Dame in Welland, he played on the national team, went to Simon Fraser. Actually, that was the first time I ever flew, was when Tom and I went on a recruiting trip out to Simon Fraser, out to Vancouver. And, for a kid that never flew before, I mean.
Age 16, 17, something like that?
That's it, yeah. And there's 747, and it's kind of like a dream come true type thing. So, and it actually was at that age too that somebody, well, Coach Heaney, you'll probably talk about him a little later, but his university coach, Stu Aberdeen, it was originally from Lewiston, New York, and his mother was very close friends with my grandmother. So when he was down in Tennessee, she mentioned about me, and then I started getting some letters from Tennessee and Stu Aberdeen. I still have them actually, and the one year that I got to meet him when he came up and visited us when I was at St. Mary's. I didn't know who he was then, but just to have that knowledge now that this guy was something special, and it's kind of like the coaching tree, Aberdeen, the Heaney, and then myself and Ross and Mick and a lot of those guys. It's, I learned at a really young age. If you want anything, you got to work for it. And you know, that's the way I always was.
And that appealed to Heaney, obviously. How did he find you at St.
Well, I'll
Mary's?
tell you, in 1976, I remember there was an all-star game, a high school all-star game in Niagara Falls, and he was coach of the women's Olympic team. And
he had taken a year sabbatical from SNU to coach the women's team.
Ed Hall, I think, was coaching St. Mary's, so he was kind of like the guest speaker at this all-star game in Niagara Falls, Ontario. And Jay was in the game, and Tommy, and a lot of the local guys. Most of them all went on to play university ball. And I got the MVP in the game, and still got the picture. Him presented me the trophy. A lot younger, both of us, but that's how he saw me. And then that summer, he flew me out. I worked the basketball camps, and I'll tell you, when I came out, the water didn't agree with me. Charlie Horse got in the knee, and I said, I hate this place. And I'll remember Kenny Seward. You might know Kenny, that played for St. Mary's. Took me for a walk the one night, and I had my first donaire. He took me for a walk, he had a donaire, and it was just listening to what Kenny had to say, and you know, it's crazy now because as a university coach, I couldn't decide. I couldn't decide whether I was going to go to St. Mary's or Simon Fraser, and
that's polar opposite stuff too.
Oh yeah. And I basically decided like the last day of August. I couldn't decide where I was going to go because I didn't want to leave home. And it's a dumb reason now, but I could stay home a week longer if I went to St. Mary's as opposed to leaving to go a week early.
Right.
And I think Stan Stewartson, who was the coach, he's passed away now. It's Simon Fraser. He's almost waiting at the airport for me to pick me up. I said, Coach, I'm going to St. Mary's.
Extra week with the chickens.
Extra week with the chickens. Yeah.
So you had never been to the Maritimes prior to coming over to that camp?
Yeah. I'd never flown anywhere. I never, you know, growing up, we didn't have never went on a lot of vacations. Like I said, we weren't impoverished, but my parents and, you know, I appreciated everything that I received, and you know, it was the best childhood anybody could ever ask for, and I owe everything to my parents.
But your first impression of Halifax was not outstanding.
No. And I looked at this little gym, you know, the old gym at St. Mary's, my God. It was like my high school had a better gym. It was brutal. And then Heaney, being a salesman, he goes, he took me down to I don't even think the Metro Center was built yet. It wasn't. But he said, they're building a new facility here, and it's going to be this and that. And we're getting a brand new facility. 40 years later, they got the tower. So, I mean, he would just tell you, anything to get you there. But like I said, no regrets. I love it, and I love Halifax, and I love Nova Scotia.
Let's come back. We'll take a break, come back and talk about the 2 back-to-back national championships.
Sure.
Your run at St. Mary's, and then later on your coaching run at Dalhousie. Yeah. Rick Plato, our guest, Legends of the Hall, continues in just a moment. Legends of the Hall continues with Rick Plato, coach of the Dalhousie Tigers men's basketball team, formerly a star with the St. Mary's Huskies, national champions in '78 and '79. That '78 game and that team was inducted into the Nova Scotia Sport Hall of Fame back in November. That game to this day, it's the one that was played in the Metro Center, which was new, in front of, 11,000 people. Why do you think that is still the most famous game we've ever seen in these parts?
Well, I think probably for a couple of reasons. There's a national final. First year of the Metro Center. 2 Nova Scotian teams that the rivalry, I think, had an awful lot to do with it. I certainly think, and I think it's proven to be the case, that over the last 25, 30 years that Halifax, the Maritimes, is kind of like the hub or the mecca of university basketball in Canada. And the talent on those teams was phenomenal. I always said that, and so did Heaney and a few other people, that our second lineup could beat probably, 3/4 of the teams in the country.
And Acadia was loaded too.
Acadia was tough. It was a very good team, yeah.
What was it like, Rick? You take a look at this video here. There was not a seat to be had in the Metro Center. Ross Quackenbush says to this day that the way the fire marshal got around it was he just kept people moving, saying, pretend you're going to concessions. So maybe 11,000. What was it like in that arena that day?
It was you know, it was special. I still remember it, and you know, I wish I would have got a little bit more time in it. The first 2 games we beat Manitoba in the semifinal or in the quarterfinal. We were the host team. That's the only
And
way we
ranked
got
eighth coming in,
eighth
right?
coming in, and we played. Manitoba was #1. They had a couple national team players, including Martin Riley, and we beat them in a good game. And then the next game we had UVic, and I got a lot of time in that game. Played well, and you know, it's just one of those things. But you know, without the 3-point line back then, it was a different. You know, we were a big team, and Acadia was big. I mean, you know, Big John Brown was 6'9", 275, 280. And then Tom Kappas, 6'8" on the national team, and Ross Quackenbush on the national team, 6'7". And, you know, you put those guys across the back line, and Frank White, 6'3", and Hawk McFarland, 6'4", that's a big lineup. And you go a 2-3 zone and make it tough to, so, you know, the 3-point shot wasn't a factor back then.
And
so.
Acadia was big too, right? Ted
Acadia
Upshaw's a big man.
Well, Victor Soares from Providence, he was 6'8", 6'9". He was built like a tank, and you know, Alvin Jessamy, and Teddy Upshaw was, I mean, he's a tough player. So it was just back and forth, and it was, I think, you know, the game was in the 90s without the 3-point line, and you know, it was never, you know, nobody really was sure until Big John dunked over, you know,
and that was late in the game.
Late in the game, and almost started a brawl, but one of those seminal moments that, holy geez, Big John just went up and just hammered it over their big guy, and that place went crazy, and just winning a national championship. You know, you always dream of it. You always dream of it, but I'll tell you, just, you know, you think about all the hard work that goes into it, and all the, you know, the time by yourself just shooting, and, you know, you know, I always tell the kids at camps, you know, you practice for the moment. You know, you never know when that moment's gonna come, but it's gonna come. And you know, you just put all that time in when nobody else is around, and you know, always, you know, like you were saying, I played with some great athletes and some great players, and you know, I wasn't the best jumper, I wasn't the best athlete, but I know nobody worked harder, and I just knew that, you know, when my time will come, that's what I tell my guys. I said, when I had my opportunity to start, nobody was coming in and was taking it away from me. So
because you would put the work in, right?
You better believe it. You better believe it. So you know, I just, you know, sharpen up the elbows a little bit, and guys would know. I mean, it meant something to me. It really meant something to me, because I knew how long and how hard I had worked for it, and the guys that I would have to play against. And you know, it's like I always tell the guys, if it's worth having, it's worth working for, and you do what you have to do, and you make sacrifices. You make sacrifices.
Well, what does a national championship do in terms of bonding a group of young guys forever?
Well, you know, when the boys got together, we got together for, you know, the Hall of Fame induction. We had one of those ceremonies at St. Mary's, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago. Some of the guys you hadn't seen in 25, 30 years, and it's, you know, it's like a time warp. Nothing.
You pick right up.
Pick right up. You know, look, some guys no hair, some guys thinner hair, everybody gray hair, a few more pounds, but you know, it's buddies, you know, like brothers. You know, you fight when you're competing, you know, you fight, but, you know, bottom line is, you know, you go through a lot together, and, you know, it's always special. It's always special.
It's something nobody can ever take away from
absolutely.
you, right?
And absolutely. And, you know, we won the next year, too, out in Calgary. You know, it was great, but, you know, in terms of comparing the two, I mean, Halifax was electric. You know, I can remember, it's gone now, but a bunch of the alumni, and he took us, the guys wanted to go over to Hoagie's there in Quinpool. And, you know, then we came back to the campus, and place was crazy. And then the next night, there was a big celebration in the gym. And I mean, it was.
You celebrated your national title at Hoagie's.
Well, we had a little dinner, but a lot of the guys didn't want to go to Hoagie's.
Right.
They had other things to do. So,
yeah.
You know what I mean? So, but it was, you know, it was so special. And, you know, like you say, once you have it, you've got it. So I've got that first plaque. Now they give the medals, but they had a nice wooden plaque with a bronze type of medallion on it, and it's hanging in my office. And you know, that means everything. That means everything.
You've mentioned Heaney a couple of times, and we've mentioned the word intensity a couple of times.
Yeah.
Those two words go together? Your former coach?
Oh, Jesus, yes. It's unbelievable. Like, I could give you a couple of stories, but you know, he's the same type of thing. You know, he scored 2 points in his high school career in New York City. Came to Acadia, still holds a single game CISU sport scoring record, and he's a national champion. He played in the pros back when they had 12 teams, not like 30 teams. So you can imagine if there were 30 teams, if he was, you know, they had the Eastern League back then. I know the one year he led the Eastern League in scoring. So, and when I first came to St. Mary's, there was a senior team called Budget, and he was still playing a little bit. But when St. Mary's guys and a few other university guys graduated, then you would play on that team. And I can remember playing 1-on-1 against them. And, you know, you talk about Tim Hardaway and Allen Iverson with the crossover. Heaney's crossover was a killer crossover. It was tough. And you just admire that, holy smokes, this guy's a coach now and he still can do that type of thing.
Right.
But, you know, like to this day, you know, he and I meet regularly. He's living back in Halifax, and you know, there's no question that other than my parents, when it comes to basketball, there's no question that he's the biggest influence on my life.
So you're an intense guy, and he's an intense guy, and sometimes when those two meet, it doesn't always go well. Were you guys always okay, or did you ever want to get out of his?
Well, you know, like I said, some of the times, let's put it this way. My third year, the last year we won in Calgary, was his last year at St. Mary's. He left to go to Alberta. So it was kind of difficult because it's kind of like you pay your dues, and then now the time that, you know, you figure you're going to start and really, he's going. So he wanted Ronnie Blomers and he flew us both out to Alberta. And I said, man, I'm not starting all over again. I said, you know, I like Halifax, and as you know, history shows, I mean, he wasn't there that long anyway, so he was going to be gone. But that's why I came back to Halifax, you know, even after I graduated. I love it. You know, people were great to me here, and you know, I've got a lot of very lifelong relationships, and but I got a funny feeling that had he stuck around when I was maybe more enabled and more maybe in a position, but who knows? I mean, knowing Heaney, winning was everything. He'd bring somebody else from an NBA rookie camp, and you know, maybe I never would have started. So that's why with Gary Heald, I mean, he gave me opportunity to you know, to really take it to the next level.
Look, before we take a break, I remember watching you play as a kid. When you would miss a shot, you would physically be really, really ticked off, right?
Right. I don't expect to miss.
Right.
I try to impart that to my players. They just don't get it. They just don't. You know, before I would leave the gym, and that's without, like I said, if there had been a 3-point line, God knows how much more time I probably would have. But you know, before you leave, you got to make 10, 10, 10, 10, and 10. And sometimes you could do it in a half an hour. Sometimes you do 3 hours, and you just. That's why I talked to him about discipline. You just have to, you know, make that commitment, make the sacrifices. And my wife Andrea, she'll attest to it, because a lot of times in the summertime, when I used to be in the gym, she would rebound or she'd do the timing, and you know, she knows. She knows.
What's your record for most foul shots in a row?
Oh, twice, 149, twice.
Couldn't get 150. What's
Ticks
wrong
me
with
off
you?
to this day.
What's wrong with you?
Ticks me off to this day.
We'll take another break. Rick Plato, member of the Nova Scotia Sport Hall of Fame. We'll talk about his coaching days with Dalhousie, plus a long run as a school teacher in Sackville. That's next on Legends of the Hall. Final segment, Legends of the Hall, with Coach Rick Plato of the Dalhousie Tigers. You were a school teacher for how many years?
Almost 33.
Demanding?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Kids like you?
Most of them.
Right.
Most of them. I started out in Sackville, and the last 27, 28 in Bedford at CP Allen.
But you demanded a certain level of performance from them?
Absolutely. You know, it'd be funny. A lot of the kids that I would have, when they came back and they'd visit after, you know, they start university, they would always say, Mr. Plato, you're harder in university. I'd say, no. I said, I got you ready for university, like all good teachers should, so that when you get there, it's not like somebody propped you up artificially by giving you 80s and 90s for smiling at them. You learn what you have to do. So I think the same type of approach, the philosophy, just understanding what they're going to really need to be able to survive as much as I could. I wasn't a math guy. I was political science, economics type history teacher. But you know, it's like players. You know, the large majority of them appreciate it later. At the time, they'd like to give you a smack in the head. So
yeah. As a coach now, what kind of premium do you place with your players on education?
Well, I'll tell you, I push, especially at Dal. The academic demands are really tough. Like, I've got a couple guys in engineering and science, pre-med. So schedule is always tough, but it's got to be number one.
And do you stay on
in order. I tell them, family, school, basketball, and then everything else. All right. So don't come and start talking to me while I got my job. I say, hey, listen, family, school, basketball. You're going to make a commitment to those, and if you can't, then go to another program. Because to me, you know, it's my biggest satisfaction, gratification. It's like with my former students, and with players is, you know, I like to see them succeed. Like when we won our first, well, when I was at the Mount, we won quite a bit, but when I saw us win our first AUS championship in the Metro Center, and then win the bronze at the, and miss playing in the national final against Carleton by a point, just the happiness and, you know, tears of joy. I just sit back and I just watch that, and that's why I do it. And they don't understand it at the time. They never do. But when they're older and they still maintain those relationships and they think back about, you know, playing in that situation and experiencing that type of exhilaration, joy, accomplishment, to me, that's the biggest thing. And when they're out in the community and they're doing well professionally, so many of the guys, you know, I try to keep tabs on them. A lot of them keep in touch. They'll let me know what's going on. But to me, that's what it's all about. And I'll tell you, there are no shortcuts. You know, like I had a chat, that we had a game there the other night, and, you know, I'll have a chat with him. I said, hey, listen, nobody cares what you did yesterday. I said, in the real world, all right, if you're in sales, half of them are commerce majors. I said, they don't care what you sold last week. They're worried about what you're going to sell tomorrow, so it's nonstop. You got to compete. You got to compete. And even with the younger kids in the camps, when I'm teaching in the camps, you know, sometimes kids, you know, they'll lose for the first time and they'll cry, and, you know, the kids, they just have to experience those highs and lows. So when they do, because that's life, you just got to get them for life. And anybody that artificially, you know, in my mind anyway, whether you're a teacher, a guidance counselor, or a coach, paints this artificial, you know, impression that life's easy. It's far from it. So when you appreciate, you know, that hard work matters, and you get what you deserve.
When you are recruiting, what are you looking for? And I guess my question is, are you looking for the kid that grew up with the chickens and the peacocks?
First and foremost, you're going to recruit kids that can play. But then after that, I want good people and good students. You know, as a young coach, I look back and then sometimes I think, well, in fact, I know I did. Took a player here and a player there just for the sake of winning, kind of like a one-year wonder type deal. It's not worth it. You know, you try to build a program of solid kids. You know, when I look at some of when I took the Dow job especially, I wanted to get the best Nova Scotians, best Maritimers. So when I look at guys like Alex Carson from here in Sackville, or Key Van Vino from the Valley, and we just recently signed, I think probably one of the top kids in the Maritimes, Sam Maye from Moncton. And there are some other kids too, Sam Wade, who played on the Canada Games team. He's from Pugwash. I want guys that are willing to work, but first and foremost, they have to be good people. I don't have time, you know, if you're not a team player, I don't want you.
Yeah. Got about 30 seconds left. How important is it for you to win a national title as coach of the Dalhousie Tigers?
Well, somebody someplace asked me what was the highlight of my basketball career, coaching career. I said it hasn't happened yet. That's what it'll be. And again, you know, it's, you know, won some as a player, you know, a lot of national tournaments as a coach, few medals in the national tournament. I know what's meant to me as a player to be a national champion, and like I said, I want it for the players. Obviously, you know, Dal and the alumni, and I love it for Halifax. I love it for Halifax because I know what it meant to Halifax back then. And like I said, when we lost Ryerson there a couple of years ago in the semifinal, it was a really good crowd. I know if we had won that game, that place would have been packed again.
Just like it was in '78.
And we're hosting this year. And I told the boys, like I told the boys a couple of years ago when we hosted, I said, we're not going in the back door. We're going in, and I really do think this year we have the ingredients. Now we got a lot of work to do, but you know, it'll be, if we're fortunate enough, and it's not going to be easy, especially the way Carleton and some of the other top teams in the country play. But my job is to get them ready to win 3 games. And if they understand that, and if they pay attention, and if they put aside their individual aspirations for the good of the team, I think we've got the horses.
Stay intense, Coach. Stay
All
intense.
the time, buddy.
You got
You know
it.
me.
Rick Plato.
It's been a real pleasure.
Coach
Thank
of the
you.
Dalhousie Tigers, member of the Nova Scotia Sport Hall of Fame. We are open, as you know, weekdays from 10 to 5. Admission at the Hall of Fame, as always, is free. We'll see you next time on Legends of the Hall.